Now we're going to be starting Chapter 4, Lesson 4, Multiply Using Expanded Form. This is also the distributive property, but using boxes to help us organize all the different steps of the distributive property. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with the equation, 37 times 9 and 5/10. From there, we're going to use the boxes to help us keep in mind where all of our numbers are. I was watching some of the third grade work, and I do know that as early as third grade and maybe even sooner, you'll be using the distributive property in different ways. So the first thing that's going to go on top is our first number, 37. We're going to break it down. This right here is the ones place, and this right here is the tens. So 37 is really 30 plus 7. That's what 37 is, right? 30 plus 7 is the same as 37. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to do 30 plus 7. So this right here is 37. We're going to do the same thing here. This is the ones place. This is 9. And this is the tens place, the 5. So this is the 9 in the ones place and the 5 in the tens place. And we're going to break it down on the left side. So 9 and 5/10. So the only thing that we've done so far is take the number 37 and break it at the top to the values. The 3 is the 30, the 7 is the ones. Then we took the 9 and 5/10 and we broke it down. The 9 is in the ones, the 5/10 is in the tenths, the 5 is in the tenths. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply all of these different sections. So in the first box, we're going to multiply the number to the left and the number above, which is 9 and 30. So for the first box, the equation is going to be 9 times 30. The second box is going to be the number to the left, which is still 9, and the number above, which is now 7. So this one is 9 times 7. So as you see, we're just doing the box to the left and the box above. Box to the left and the box above. This one right here is now using the 5/10. So 0.5 times the number above is 30. 0.5, 5/10 times 7. So, step 1, take the first number. So as I was saying, take the first number, 37, and break it down to the different place values. Take 9 and 5/10, again, break it down to the place values. This one goes on top, this one goes to the side. Then for each box, just multiply the two numbers that make up that one box. Next step is multiplying all of these out. And for multiplication, we're going to be looking at our base numbers, and from there, just changing the place value by adding zeros or moving the decimals to the left based on the place value itself. So the base numbers here are 9 and 3. 9 times 3 is 27. And from here, we're going to add 1 0. Because 3, this is 3. We did 9 times 3. But this actual number is 30. And as we did, remember when we were doing lesson 1, the tens, the hundreds, the thousands, we're going to add a 0. So here, we only add 1 0. And our number is 270. Okay? We're going to do the same thing again. The base numbers are 9 and 7. 9 times 7 is 63, and there's no zeros to add, and there's no decimals to have to worry about. Here, there were no decimals that we had to worry about. Keep in mind, whenever we're doing 10, 100, 1,000, we're adding zeros because the number's getting bigger. If we're doing anything like 1/10, 1/100th, 1/1000th, 1/10th, 1/100th, 1/1000th, then we're moving the decimals to the left. So here we're moving it to the right and we're adding zeros. Here we're moving it to the left and moving the decimal. So here 9 times 3 was 27, and this was like in the 30s time frame in the sense that it's the tens, hundreds, thousands. We're adding 1 0. Here there were no zeros to add and there was no decimals to worry about. Here we have two things to do. We have the 5 and the 3. 5 times 3 is 15. We're going to add a 0 for the 30. So we're going to add a 0. And then here we have a decimal. So we're going to have to move the decimal one time to the left, like the tenths. We're going to move it one time to the left. So our final answer is 15.0, which is 15. Okay, 15.0 is the same as 15. Then here we have our last one, 5 times 7. 7 times 5 is 35. Then here, there's no zeros to add, because none of them are in the tens, hundreds, thousands, or in that sense. But here's the decimal, so we are going to move it to the left. And it's one time. So we're going to move it to the left once. And so our final answer here is 3.5, 3 5/10. So step 1 was just writing out your numbers. Step 2 was writing out the equations. And step 3 was solving each box. Solving each box is probably the trickiest part, and I hope that it makes more sense as we keep going through them. The last step that we need to do is add up your 4 answers here. So we have 270, 63, 15, and 3 5/10. This is where a lot of students make a mistake because they don't line up their decimals. Here, our largest number is in the hundreds place because that's the largest one, hundreds. And our lowest one is in the tens place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little cheat sheet. And sometimes I'm just going to go above and beyond. This is the hundreds, the tens, the ones, tens, hundreds. This is the tenths, the hundredths, and the thousandths. And I'm not going to write it all out. So 270. 270 is 270. 63 is in the tens place. 63. 15 is in the tens place. 15. And last but not least is 3 5/10. The 3 is in the ones place, decimal 5. So you can see here all of the numbers are lined up. Where I'm going to add all the tenths. There's only one of them in the tens place, which makes it 5/10. You're going to add up all the ones. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 2, 3. So the most important thing that you have to do is make sure when you're adding these 4 numbers, you're lining up all of the digits. And the way I did it was I created a top part where it says hundreds, tens, ones, decimal, tens, hundreds, thousands, and I put all the numbers where they should go. Make sure to stay nice and organized in this sense. Your final answer for 37 times 9 and 5/10 is 351 and 5/10. I know that I did that kind of quickly, and if you want, you could definitely slow this video down and rewind it. The trickiest part is knowing how to multiply these 4 digits. First step was just finding out the numbers. Second step, the equations. Now this part's the tricky part, when you're either adding zeros or you're moving the decimals. So finding the base number is pretty easy. 9 times 3 is 27, 9 times 7 is 63, 5 times 3 is 15, 5 times 7 is 35, but those aren't your final answers. If the numbers are in like the tens, hundreds, thousands, or in other words, oops, that should have been 1,000 here, 30s, then you're adding zeros. If you see any decimals, then you're moving the decimal. So we're either adding zeros or moving decimals depending on the extra numbers, the extra values. Okay, I'm going to do one more problem with you. And the most important thing when you're watching this number 2 part of the video is that you're working and pausing the video to make sure you actually understand it without my help. So we're starting with 84 times 24 hundredths. So the first thing you do is just write out 84 times 24 hundredths. The second step is you're going to create your boxes. Make sure your boxes are big enough for you to write an equation and also solve it. Now as you write it out, on the first box is your first number, or the top box. And so you're going to break down 84. This is the tens place, this is the ones. So 8 tens is 80, 4 ones is 4. 80 plus 4 make 84. And so on the top box, you're going to go 80 plus 4. So go ahead and pause and do it. Now what I want you to do before you watch this second section is break down 24 hundredths on your own. So pause it, see if you can break down 24 hundredths and see if you get the same answer for what goes at the top and the bottom here, the left and the right, on the left and right side. That being said, hopefully you pause the video. The 2 is in the tens place, so you have 2 tenths. The 4 is in the hundredths place, so you have 4 hundredths. It should look something like that. 2 tenths, 2 tenths, 4 hundredths, 4 hundredths, 24 hundredths. So hopefully you have that one correct. Now, that's step 1. Breaking down the numbers so you have your 2 numbers on top and your 2 numbers on the side. Step number 2 is writing out your equation. So hopefully for this box, you're going to multiply these 2 numbers. This box, you're going to multiply these 2 numbers. This box, these 2 numbers. This last box, these 2 numbers. Try pausing the video and seeing if you get the same answer. Keep in mind if you have the same numbers but you switch them around, that's fine because the commutative property of multiplication says that is fine. So for me, I'm going to do 0 and 2 tenths times 80. But if you have the same digits but you switch them to 80 and 2 tenths, that's fine. Here I'm going to do 0 and 2 tenths times 4. My camera went a little weird, so I'm going to explain that again. For this box, I'm doing 0 and 2 tenths times 80, because that's the number to the left and above it. If you switched and put 80 times 2 tenths, that's fine. Just make sure that the 2 is in the tenths place. Likewise here, I'm going to be doing 0 and 2 tenths times 4. However, if you switched it to 4 times 0 and 2 tenths, that is fine as well. For the next box, I'll be using the numbers 0 and 4 hundredths. 0 and 4 hundredths times 80. Again, 80 times 0 and 4 hundredths is fine. 0 and 4 hundredths times 4. This one gets a little more exciting because we're going to have a lot more movement and adding of zeros and things than in the first one. We're going to be starting by squaring our base numbers. 2 and 8. 2 times 8 is 16. Here we have an 80, which means we're going to be adding a 0. So 16 is now going to be 160. And then there's no decimals here. Here there is a decimal, and you moved it 1 time to the left. And so you're going to move it 1 time to the left. And this final answer is 16.0, which is 16. You see what I did there? Let's do it slower for this one. Our base numbers are 2 and 4. 2 times 4 is 8. There are no zeros to add because there's nothing behind any of the base numbers that we squared. However, there is a decimal here, and you moved it 1 time. There's no decimal here, so all you're doing is moving the decimal 1 time. Decimal 8 is the same as 0 and 8 tenths, because decimal 8 is 8 tenths, so 0 and 8 tenths. Okay, here's our base numbers, 4 and 8. 4 times 8 is 32. And you can see here, you're adding a 0 because that 80 is larger than 1, and it's by 1 0. And here you have a decimal, and check this one out. You're moving it 1 time before the 4, and a 2nd time before the 0. So this time you're moving it 2 times. So it's very important you move it 2 times. Here you have no decimals to worry about. But you're going to move it 1 time before the 0 and a 2nd time before the 2. Because this time, unlike the other ones that we've had in the past, there are 1, 2 movements. So your final answer is 3.20, which is the same as 3.2, 3 and 2 tenths. You could put 3.20. And we're in our last box. 4 and 4. 4 times 4 is 16. There are no zeros to add. However, there is a decimal, so we are going to be moving it one time before the 4 and one time before the 0, a total of 2 times. There's no decimal here, so we're going to move it one time before the 6 and one time before the 1. And so it's decimal 1/6, which is 16 hundredths. So 0 and 16 hundredths. I'm going to review the steps really quickly. First step, took the 84 and we broke it down. 80 plus 4. Took the 24 hundredths and broke it down. 2/10, 4 hundredths. Second step, write all the equations out, multiplying these two, these two, these two, these two. And last but not least, multiplying them all out. Squaring our base numbers, adding zeros for any time that the base number at the end has a 0, a multiple of 10, 100, or 1,000. And then moving the decimal based on how many times you had to move it in the total. That being said, the hardest and trickiest part is definitely adding them all up. The numbers are 16, 8/10, 3 and 20 hundredths, and 16 hundredths. So this one we don't need to go all the way to hundreds, but I'm going to do it anyway. Hundreds, tens, ones, decimal, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So from the decimal, ones, tens, hundredths, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. And 16 is 1 in the tens and 6 in the ones. 16, 1 in the tens, 6 in the ones. 8/10 is decimal 8/10. And if I want, I could put that 0 in the ones place. Here, 3 and 20 hundredths. The 3 is in the ones place, so here's the ones. The decimal's right here. 20 hundredths, or even 3.2. 3, either way, it's the same. And 0 and 16 hundredths. 16 hundredths. This 1 is in the tenths, the 6 is in the hundredths. And you can see all of my numbers are lined up. And that's the most important part when you're adding. So here, in the hundredths place, it's 6 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0, 6. In the tenths place, it's 8 plus 2, which is 10, plus 1 is 11. In the ones place, it's 6 plus 1 is 7, plus 3 is 10. And in the tenths place is 1 plus 1, and our decimal. So your final answer for 84 times 24 hundredths is 20 and 16 hundredths. This one looks very intimidating in terms of all the steps you have to do, but taking it one step at a time, breaking down what numbers go where, what numbers you're going to multiply, and then just multiplying them out and adding them up, the steps aren't too bad. I think the part that you need to very much pay attention to are when you're adding zeros and moving the decimals. That's probably a tricky part, and making sure to line up your decimals. So hopefully this helped you. I am going to help start you off on the word problem, but I'm not going to solve it for you. So, an object weighs 1 pound on the moon. An object that weighs 1 pound on the moon will weigh about 6 2/100ths of a pound on Earth. Suppose a moon rock weighs 11 pounds on the moon. How much will the same rock weigh on Earth? So, on Earth it's heavier. So here, if it's 11 pounds on the moon, it's going to be heavier on Earth. So each pound, here's pound 1, it'll be 6 2/100ths of an actual pound. So this is the pound 1, this is the moon pound 1, and that's what it'll weigh on Earth. This is like the pound for Earth. Here's the moon pound 2, and on Earth it'll be, and we have 11 pounds of this. And so each time you have another pound on the moon, it's 6 2 pounds more on Earth. So what you could do is 6.02 plus 6.02 plus 6.02 11 times. However, this is now, before, I'm not going to solve this one for you, but I am going to help you start it off. So we're doing 6 2/100 times 11. 6 2/100 times 11. So for this first box, you only have the 6, which is in the ones place, and the hundredths, which is in the hundredths place. So you only have a 6 and a hundredths. And here the 11 breaks down to 10 and 1. So those are the way that you'll break down your numbers: 6 2/100, 10 plus 1. Let's go ahead and solve that one when you have time. And then I hope you start this one off. Tessa is on the track team. For practice and exercise, she runs 2 and 25 miles each day. At the end of 14 days, how many total miles will she have run? So this is day 1. She ran 2 and 25 hundredths of a mile. Day 2, she ran 2 and 25 hundredths of a mile. She's going to be running for a total of 14 days, and each time doing 2 and 25 hundredths of a mile. This would be the total miles in 14 days. And then all you have to do is 2 and 25 hundredths times 14. Again, I'm going to help set this up on the box here, only because this one's a little trickier. So here we're doing 2 and 25 hundredths times 14. Do you notice how here you have 3 digits? Guess what's going to happen is you're going to have 3 boxes for that section. So since you have 3 digits going on here, and that's where this one goes, going left and right, you're going to have 3 boxes going this way. So the 2 breaks down to 2 whole. The next 2 goes to the 2 tenths, and the next one is the 5 hundredths. So you're going to do the same exact thing, but this time you're going to have a 2 tenths, and a 5 hundredths. See what they did there? 2 tenths, 5 hundredths. And then here your 14 is 10 and 4. And so it's very similar, except this time, since there's 3 digits, there'll be 3 digits here. Likewise, if there were 3 digits here, you'd have 3 boxes going this way. So since 3 digits were here, you'll have three numbers here. 3 digits, 3 boxes, 3 numbers. 2 tenths, 5 hundredths, 10, 4. So hopefully this does help you. This time you'll be adding up 6 numbers, but the same process. This will be the first box, the second, the third, first, second, third. Add up all 6 answers. Hopefully this helps you. All right.